Pressure mounts on the Prime Minister over a Brexit plan Labour calls a shambles. As more MPs insist they want a vote on her strategy, Theresa May hardens her stance.
The UK will be leaving the European Union. We're not asking ourselves what bits of membership we want to retain.
Also tonight, 27 years in jail for the cafe owner who murdered a schoolgirl.
Why the police stand accused of failing the victims of modern-day slavery.
And the horse nobody wanted, who's now worth £500,000.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The Prime Minister came under intense pressure in the Commons today over her plans for Brexit. Jeremy Corbyn called it a Tory Brexit shambles, a claim Theresa May herself dismissed, insisting negotiations would be ambitious for Britain.
But that did not satisfy MPs, including some in Mrs May's own party, who want a vote on the Brexit strategy. Nor did she say whether or not staying in the single market would be a negotiating red line. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan has more.
We know where we're going, out of the EU, Brexit, and when we're going to get there, in about 2.5 years' time. But we've no idea how we're getting there or what it will look like when we arrive. Today, the Prime Minister set off to sound a tough line on immigration and the single market.
The UK will be leaving the European Union. We're not asking ourselves what bits of membership we want to retain. We're saying what is the right relationship for the UK to have to the maximum benefit of our economy and citizens of this country.
Jeremy Corbyn!
But Labour suspects she is too easily being dragged away from the idea of the single market by her backbench MPs.
Is the Prime Minister really willing to risk a shambolic Tory Brexit just to appease the people behind her?
So Labour want a vote on Britain's Brexit strategy before negotiations start. Haven't they got a point about not wanting to give away the negotiating strategy before starting negotiations?
On day one, they will be telling 27 nations what it is that they want. On day one, those 27 nations will be asking them the 170 questions, if not more than the ones that we've asked. On that day, you will be told what it is that Britain is asking for. This is nonsense, them saying they need to keep it a secret.
There followed calls from all sides for a vote before Article 50, the process of leaving, is triggered.
This place, in keeping with the greatest traditions of the mother of all parliaments, should hold this government to account for what it's going to do now, since the government does not have a mandate on how to exit the European Union after the referendum on the 23rd of June.
This place must vote on Article 50. I really do think that it is imperative that we do that.
But the government held firm there would be no vote.
While we commend and welcome parliamentary scrutiny, it must not be used as a vehicle to undermine the government's negotiating position or thwart the process of exit. Both things are important.
But all the signs around Westminster are that Parliament is not just going to let the government decide how we leave the EU and ultimately what Brexit looks like. Now, if all of this sounds like slightly tedious political process, well, I'm afraid it is. But it's important because, of course, nobody got to vote on what sort of Brexit they wanted to see. And MPs think that as people's representatives, they should have a say. And they think that they're dragging the government in that direction. The government's concern is that with most MPs opposed to leaving the EU in the first place, they will hold the whole thing up.
All right, Carl, thank you very much.
There were shouts of scum and monster as the killer of 15-year-old Paige Doherty was sent to prison for her murder today. John Latham stabbed the teenage girl more than 60 times in his cafe before dumping her body in bushes 2 days later.
For that savage and frenzied attack, Latham was jailed for at least 27 years. From the High Court in Glasgow, Peter Smith.
These are the last pictures of Paige Doherty on her way to a Saturday job when she stops at her local deli. Inside, Paige endured a frenzied attack, stabbed and slashed by the deli owner at least 146 times. John Latham can then be seen minutes later sprinting out of his shop to buy extra-large bin bags. Today, Latham was sentenced to 27 years and Paige's family were there to see justice.
There is no sentence high enough to justify what has happened, but we can now say there is one less evil man in this world, which then makes the world that bit more safe for our kids to grow up in. Paige is now safe and can finally rest in peace knowing justice has been served to a high standard.
John Letham has no history of violence, but the CCTV footage shows how he tried to cover his crime, cleaning up with antibacterial wipes and bringing his car outside to move the body. Paige was found 2 days later, dumped next to a main road. Cameras were allowed in court today to hear Letham being sentenced.
What you did was truly reprehensible. It is impossible to comprehend how an apparently happily married man with a young child who's running a successful business is capable of such an horrific level of violence.
Paige's family now know that these were their little girl's final steps. They know how she was killed and who killed her. What they still don't understand, though, is why. Letham had claimed he killed Paige because she threatened to accuse him of touching her unless he gave her a job. Today, the judge completely rejected that story. Now, Paige's family have asked people to remember their girl as she was in life, not as a victim of this violent and inexplicable murder. Peter Smith, ITV News, Glasgow.
3 police officers from the West Midlands force have been charged in connection with the death of a man in custody 5 years ago. They're accused of perverting the course of justice and perjury over the death of Kingsley Burrell in 2011. Sejal Karia is in Birmingham for us this evening. Sejal, what happened?
Kingsley Burrell was detained by police under the Mental Health Act following a disturbance in 2011. 4 days later, he suffered a fatal heart attack at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. Last year, an inquest into his death was told that was after a violent struggle with police officers in the back of an ambulance. It was also told that he was left handcuffed for 5 or 6 hours on the hospital floor. The jury concluded that prolonged restraint and a failure to provide him with basic medical attention led to his death. Today, his family responded to the charges brought against those 3 serving police officers. In a statement, they said that they welcome today's decision to prosecute the 3 officers concerned in the belief they must be held accountable for their actions in the circumstances surrounding Kingsley's death. The officers will appear before a court at the end of October.
All right, Sejal, thank you very much indeed.
Now, one of Jeremy Corbyn's top aides has provoked new controversy over Syria by suggesting people should protest outside the American embassy in London. The call came a day after the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said people should demonstrate outside the Russian embassy over Russia's vote in the Syrian conflict. There have not been any protests there today.
And an inquest has ruled that a hospital in Berkshire, where a mother died giving birth to twins, failed to provide her with basic medical attention. A coroner said Estelle O'Sullivan died after staff at Wexham Park Hospital missed opportunities to save her when she lost a large amount of blood.
Now, if you thought slavery stopped being a fact of British life nearly 200 years ago, a major report out today is saying you need to think again. One victim has told ITV News the shocking story of how she was trafficked into slavery on a suburban street right here in this country.
And there are thousands more, including British children, forced to work as slaves by criminal gangs. Our national editor, Allegra Stratton, has this special report.
A government video helping people to spot the signs of slavery. It isn't something from the history books or that happens abroad. It's everywhere in modern Britain. Crystal was held captive in Hertfordshire by a Nigerian family. She was bought for £700. She worked 18-hour days and slept on the kitchen floor. Crystal wasn't allowed to leave the house or speak to anyone without permission.
I'm not allowed to speak even to the mailman, to anyone. I'm not to answer the door. And it's scary. You then feel worthless. You walk, but like you're not there. You get up and you just pray and you think, is this the day the police would probably come and rescue me, someone would rescue me? And it's just sad. How can someone look at me, a grown woman, and tell me you bought me?
The Commissioner warns that there are as many as 13,000 victims of modern slavery in the UK today. In 12 months to April, over 3,000 potential victims had been referred to the Modern Slavery Unit at the National Crime Agency. 884 of these cases have been recorded, but of them, only 117 end up with successful convictions. Most of their perpetrators are going unprosecuted. Today, the Anti-Slavery Commissioner criticises the police.
Well, I think there's a lack of understanding and acceptance that this is serious and organised crime. There is a mix sometimes with immigration, and this is seen as an immigration issue when it's not. Because if we don't actually respond and pursue those who commit these crimes, the criminals are operating with impunity.
Do you think that you, as the Commissioner, need to be looking into what's going on with British kids being pushed around the country?
I totally agree that I need to look at that issue. And again, you know, this is criminals, organised criminality. Whilst everybody's just pushing it over the county lines and not accepting responsibility, or whilst everybody's looking at those victims as just somebody who isn't entitled to support, so they should be a #1 priority for policing.
And are they?
I don't think they are, no.
This issue is the Prime Minister's political priority, but we now know that until the police make it a priority, progress will be limited.
OK, so Theresa May says this is one of her top priorities, and yet the police aren't taking it seriously, you're saying. Why not?
Well, because, I mean, it's not resources. We talked to the Anti-Slavery Commissioner about that. He said it's not resources. They simply don't recognise it. To be fair to Theresa May, she did push it to the top of the agenda. It's very early days. It's young legislation. But just let me show you two police forces here from the report today. West Midlands, 350 cases brought, 0 prosecutions. London Met, over 1,200 brought and only 18. The change on the ground, it's just not happening.
Allegra, thank you very much indeed.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News. Price wars, why Tesco is running short of supplies of major household brands tonight.
And a call for more baby organ donors from the parents of the youngest child to receive 2 new lungs.
Their child does live on in Imogen. Her happiness and her brightness is what you can see shines through, not just from one child, but from 2 now.
Those stories and more after the break. Hello and welcome back. Now to look at little Imogen Bolton today. It's hard to believe that only a few months ago her life was saved thanks to a pioneering piece of medical history and a large helping of luck. The history was made because at the age of just 5 months, she became the youngest person ever to have a double lung transplant. And the luck part came in with finding a suitable donor for that life-saving operation in the first place. Rebecca Barry has Imogen's extraordinary story.
Every single breath is a small medical triumph. Because at just 5 months old, Imogen became the youngest person in Britain to receive a double lung transplant.
What will you tell Imogen about her lungs when she's older?
That they're very special, and that she's very special, and that there's a special, special baby that lives inside of her.
Imogen was born with a rare illness affecting the development of her lungs. Doctors said her only chance of survival was to find a donor. And just a week later, they found a match.
For around 8 hours, surgeons worked meticulously to attach the tiny lungs, just inches long, to Imogen's tiny airways, just millimetres wide. But some babies, in desperate need of a transplant, aren't that lucky.
In the UK, there are 150 children waiting for transplants. 34 need a heart or lung or both. Last year, 15 children died waiting.
Everybody is not as lucky as Imogen. We're incredibly fortunate that the donor family made that really difficult decision, and I'd urge people to sign up to the organ registry. It only takes 1 to 2 minutes to do online.
If the donor family happened to be watching ITV News now, what would you say to them?
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's all I can say. And I'm dreadfully sorry for your loss. Dreadfully sorry. What they need to know is that part of their child does live on in Imogen. Her happiness and her brightness is what you can see shines through, not just from one child, but from 2 now.
Soon they'll celebrate Imogen's first birthday, and they won't forget the other baby who helped her reach it. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
The film company that produced the latest Star Wars film has been fined £1.6 million after Harrison Ford broke his leg on set. The star was crushed by a hydraulic door while filming for The Force Awakens last summer. Foodle's production company, which is owned by Disney, admitted breaching health and safety duties.
The banking group Lloyds is cutting more than 1,200 jobs. It's part of a 3-year plan that will see jobs cut across the group's retail, marketing and finance divisions. Lloyds say the cuts are nothing to do with Brexit.
More children in England are to be vaccinated against flu this year than ever before. The vaccination programme by the NHS is being rolled out to include immunisation for 7- and 8-year-olds. It means over 4 million children will receive the jab.
And fancy dress shops are being asked not to sell clown costumes to anyone who might be part of the current craze for wearing them to scare people. Police have warned those taking part in the craze could face arrest.
Now, a major dispute over pricing means the high street giant Tesco is running low on some of Britain's best-known grocery brands. Because of the falling pound, Unilever wanted to put up the price of famous products like Marmite, Coleman's Mustard and Ben & Jerry's. The standoff came when Tesco refused. Our business editor Joel Hills is here. Extraordinary situation. How did this all come about?
Well, and it's this evening, the situation seems to be getting worse. Looking at the Tesco's website, in addition to Ben & Jerry's, Marmite, Coleman's products that you've mentioned there, Hellmann's mayonnaise, that's now unavailable. Pot noodle, Flora margarine, Surf, Persil, they've all disappeared from the Tesco website. Probably still available in store, Mark. Unilever is the company that makes all of these brands. It's a global company. It has a significant presence here in the UK. As you say, it, like a lot of other companies, is feeling the after effects of the weakness of the pound that fell shortly after the referendum. It's tried to pass on its rising costs to Tesco, and Tesco has said no.
So are we going to see other supermarkets take a similar attitude? I mean, where does this go?
Well, my understanding is that Unilever has done this with every single one of the larger supermarkets. The dispute with Tesco has obviously unravelled to the extent that Unilever is no longer supplying it as of today, but they're in negotiation with all the other supermarkets. And supermarkets are in a bit of a bind here, Mark, because they have got pretty tight margins. They've been fighting a price war over the last 4 years. They're reluctant to put up their prices precisely because they don't want to lose customers. I spoke to Dave Lewis, the chief executive of Tesco, a week ago, and he was saying to me, look, yeah, inflation's going up, there's price pressure there, but I can promise my customers I'm going to do everything I can to keep prices down. It was at that time that he was already in talks with Unilever. Unilever's boss was one of the companies, Mark, that warned before the referendum that they would be negatively impacted if we decided to vote to leave. And we're seeing some of the explanation of that coming through now.
All right, interesting stuff. Joel, thanks very much indeed.
Finally, a tale of sporting transformation as unlikely as it is romantic. No, not Leicester City this time, but an unknown racehorse called Mrs. Danvers, which in a few short months has galloped from reject to revelation.
Yes, back in February, nobody wanted to buy the horse, poor thing, not even for a knockdown £1,000. Now, she's worth £500,000. Our sports correspondent Ian Payne investigates.
Mrs. Danvers is an inquisitive horse. She's named after a character in a Daphne du Maurier novel, whose story is just as fanciful. Her mother, called Rebecca, as in the novel, was an average racehorse with failing health. Both mother and daughter cost their owners nothing. They're owned by Mark Burton, a joiner in Portsmouth, and his wife Connie, a hospital administrator. Mrs. Danvers was taken to the sales, but no one would buy her, not even for £1,000.
No, not one bid. No, I know it's mad, and it's mad now, but then people, if they had seen what she had done, then she would have had loads of bids for her, because but we're quite glad because we still got her, and we're happy.
So they kept her, and she's become a star. She's won all 5 races so far.
Mrs. Danvers wins the Cornwallis.
She's won £200,000 in prize money and is now worth an estimated £500,000. But they won't sell her.
Of course, everyone could do with the money, can't they?
Pay off your mortgage?
Yeah, it would be nice. We put everything into our horses, so but I don't think at this present time we'd be tempted to sell her.
Really?
No.
Even for that much?
No.
Maybe it's not just the sport for kings after all.
Well, that's the big thing about this story of Mrs. Danvers that people need to know. You don't have to be a millionaire to have a very successful racehorse, and people shouldn't be deterred thinking it's a millionaire's game, because it's not.
It's a heartwarming tale which has defied all the odds. Ian Payne, ITV News, Hampshire.
That is
I'm gonna buy
heartwarming.
the rights on the movie.
Yeah, probably.
It will be a movie.
Brilliant. That is all for now. Tom Bradby will be here with news at 10.
But from all the evening news team, have a very good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.